Ayan na! Kamusta kayo dyan, mga kababayan? Kababayan, kamusta kayo dyan? Mag-update naman tayo. Mukhang hindi lang tayo napagod kagabi sa kakadaldal ng 3 oras na podcast after 1 hour interview with Senator Laila De Lima, of course, kahapon. So, 4 hours of podcast alone, aside from other works, aside from traffic and everything. Medyo nalagnat na tayo. Kitang-kita nyo naman kahapon, medyo delays tayo dyan. Mukhang hindi naman tayo lang palang napagod, mga kameta. Bati yung ating minamahal na presidente. Tired na daw siya. He lost steam daw after all of his trips. Nakakapagod talaga mag-travel, mga kameta. Hear it from me, diba? Na Greenland, Sweden, Denmark, Singapore, Baguio, yan, medyo napagod tayo. So, alam natin yan, nakikiano tayo sa ating minamahal na presidente, napagod naman sa kaka-travel, mga kameta. Nag-run out of steam na daw. Wala nang party. Okay, mga kameta. Ito, marami tayong pag-usapan today. Hindi lang itong minamahal natin presidente, pag-usapan natin semiconductors, high quality investment. Pag-usapan natin, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, ang laki ng baksak nung mga, naku, yung profits ng Bangko Sentral. Naku po, medyo 70% na baksak. Of course, ito po yung Bangko ng Bayan. At that raises big questions, of course, mga kameta, about the future of Maharlika Sovereign Wealth Fund. Kung yung BSP natin ay hirap na at may mga questions dun sa viability ng Land Bank and other institutions na mag-fund sa Maharlika Sovereign Fund, that's gonna raise a lot of questions, mga kameta. So pag-usapan natin lahat ng mga yan, mga kameta. Dapat sasabihin ko na, mahal ko kayo. Yan. Alam mo yung nakakainis yung mga ganon, yung mga ayoko na magsalita. Pero sige, magsalita na ako. Alam mo yung mga tipong dati nag-high school musical na lang, tapos ngayon medyo titas of California na, biglang na-discover yung pagka-Pinoy. Next thing you know, nagiging ambassador ek ng Pinas. Tapos yung iba pa sa kanila, ang tagal-tagal. Pinoy na nga sila, never sila natuto mag-Tagalog, kahit konti lang. Hindi ko talaga maintindihan yan. Alam mo, any other half Asian blood, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, Thai, whatever na kilala ko, may konting effort yung mga bata matuto yung mga language na Asian side nila. No? Ito yung mga half American, half European, whatever, yung mga Eurasian na yan. Ito talaga may mga nakikita tayo mga biglang, mahal ko kayo, yung mga ganun na lang. Hindi, naisip ko yan kasi may nag-comment sa akin, Sir, bakit parang may pagka-bentulfo kang slang? Excuse me, wala akong tuwang na ganyan. Yung mga ganyan. United States. Hindi naman ako ganyan magsalita, mga kamets. Medyo konyang Tagalog natin pero matino naman tayo mag-Ingles. Tingnan niyo naman mga interviews natin sa CNN, BBC, CNBC. Medyo matino naman tayo. Hindi naman tayo mga ganyan na tuwang-tuwang sa. Hindi ko na sinasabi na si Paring Ben ay ganyan. Ang sinasabi ko lang, iba yung pagkakonyo namin. Alright? Just to be clear on that. So, mahal ko kayo. Yung mga ganyan, ilang taon ka na, 30, 40, whatever. Ang tagal mo na, half Filipino ka, hindi ka man lang natuto magsabi ng mahal ko kayo or yun ang sinasabi ko. Dapat talaga we raise yung mga kababayan natin na may either puro or halo, etc. Of course, including yours truly. Diba? At least nag-effort tayo. Ako nga, marunong pa nga ako mag-Ilocano eh. Oh, mamaya na si Mekos Insan. Yung klase yun yung Mekos na yan. May nagsabi, baka gusto mo gumawa rin ng mga kalokohan na ganyang videos, parang si Mekos Insan. Mr. Nobody ba yan? Nagsabi ko, wag na, baka masirang karir natin dyan. Mamaya na tayo makimekos dyan, ha? Naku po! Grabe naman yung kay Mekos, medyo bordering racist na yan. Wag naman ganon. Ito naman si Kamekos, nagalit tuloy yung mga kababayan niya sa kanya. Anyway, ang sinasabi ko lang, dun sa mga dugang Pinoy, huwag naman kayo biglang ma-rediscover nyo lang yung pagka-Pinoy nyo, yung medyo, yung career nyo sa kabilang mundo ay medyo, titas of California na. Huwag naman sanang ganun. Tapos kung magtatagalog naman kayo, practicean nyo naman ng konti. Hindi naman yung, mahal ka kayo, yung mga ayusin nyo naman. Hindi naman ganyan magtagalog, di ba? Ano ba naman mga alam mo ko yung Tagalog ko, minsan baluktot, minsan ganun. Pero at least nag-effort naman tayo, mga kameta. Amo mag-Ilocano. Kuha natin yung Ilocano vibes natin, mga kamets. Bago natin pag-usapan si Mekos, hindi Hindi si Mekos, Marcos ang pag-usapan natin. Insan, mga kainsan. Mamaya na tayo mag-Mekos, mag-Marcos muna tayo. Kaya sinasabi ko, masyadong soft yung culture natin. Masyado tayong soft. We have to assert yung distinct Filipino identities. Kasi yung mga kababayan natin dyan na may halo ng ibang dugo or base sa ibang bansa, lumaki sa ibang bansa, mag-effort naman kayo matuto ng lingwahe natin. Huwag naman ganun. Ako nga, both Ilocano, Tagalog nga, kahit ganyan baluktot Tagalog natin, nag-effort naman tayo mga kumeta. I-mekos-mekos nyo naman yung ano nyo, yung mga ano nyo, yung background nyo, yung cultural heritage nyo, masyado tayong soft eh. Anything goes. Ganon. Dapat we have to assert it. Kaya sabi ko yung mga kilala ko, mga half Thai, half Vietnamese, half ganon. Tapos kano yung Tata or Europeo, ganon, or whatever combination. Nag-e-effort matuto eh. Nag-e-effort matuto ng lingwahe ng Asian side nila. So huwag tayo masyadong yung mga mekos-mekos dyan, yung mix-mix katulad ng natin dyan, effort natin yan. Okay, Thanks. Salamat kay Lola, yung Ilocano ko medyo matigas yung accent ko talaga. Ganyan. Okay, mga kamekos, mga kamarcos. Ito na. Dami natin pag-usapan. So, let me just give you an outline. Yung mga iba dyan, nagpapatawa lang ako pero seryoso akong tao. Okay, so obviously we're going to talk about President Marcos Jr. Ayan, change tone na. We're going to talk about President Marcos Jr. We're going to talk about nakapagod ng travel. But let's connect this to something more serious. Kasi, I want the President to be at his 100% because otherwise, ang dami natin mga problema. And speaking of the President, recently, just as we predicted mga kameta just few days ago, actually just 2 days ago or so, magkakaroon ng change in position of the government dun sa issue ng ICC, International Criminal Court. And that's exactly what we're seeing. So kung titignan niyo yung meta ko, just the other day on whether si Sara, si Bato, pwede mga ICC, di ba yung position ng kabila dyan, ay wala na. Sinabi na ni Marcos na against siya sa ICC. But this is June and so much has changed since then. Kaya nga sabi natin, kailangan natin si Marcos Jr. to be decisive. No, and the hammer should come down if talagang kailangan some big moves to happen. Alright? Yan. Mga kamekos dyan. Alright. Okay. Now, just to give a preview what I was referring to dun sa issue ng BSP, no? So, apparently, already by September, there were already alarm bells dito sa BSP na 64% nag-plunge yung profit nila, and then most recently, umakyat pa up to 70% yung year-on-year decline nila dun sa kanilang profit. So, ang dami natin mga problema. At I think the President has to really seriously reassess itong Maharlika Sovereign Wealth Fund if this is the right time for a fund like that. Bakit purong si Harry Roque ang lumalabas dito sa mga files ko dito? Wait lang, mga insan. Wait lang. Hindi, ito. Saan na to? Saan na yun? Ito. Ito. Diba? Ang laki nung baksak ng profits ng BSP, etc. And remember, BSP is supposed to be one of the institutional funders or sources of funding for Maharlika Sovereign Fund. Pag-usapan din natin yan mga kameta. Seryoso natin. Tama na yung mga mekos na yan, mag-Marcos na tayo. Anyway, let's go first to our president. Let's check what's up with our president because, he's quite away, for a while. So, let's see what's happening. Of course, he went to the Apex Summit and then he went to Hawaii. Yan, hirap niyan, travel, very difficult. Alright, so sabi ng ating mahal na presidente, ito, he ran out of spin. Hindi ko sinabi, he ran out of spin. Ayan na naman tayo delikado tayo na Freudian slip na out of spin, out of steam. Okay, mga kameto, delikado talaga tayo. Mahal ko kayo, yan. Ayan, tuloy parang Hawaiian na lang tayo. Okay, ito. Sabi nating minamahal na presidente, mga kamets, mga kamekos. Sabi ni President Marcos Jr. nung Friday, nung bumalik siya, napagod siya dun sa kanyang 6-day trip to the United States. Pero okay naman daw siya. Ito yung sinabi niya, basically, I just ran out of steam. Hindi pa ako nakapag-recover sa biyahe. I suppose I just need the rest. I am fine now. Thank you for your concern. Diba talagang minamahal natin ng presidente yan. Now, obviously, President Marcos Jr., we need him at his best. In fairness naman, hindi madali mag-travel ng intercontinental and all, just to be fair to the president. But obviously guys, of course, alam niyo naman, marami mga negative reaction dahil sinasabi nila, abang hirap naman ng buhay, travel and travel. Pero in fairness naman to the president, he had a pretty packed schedule, meeting President Xi Jinping. That was not an easy conversation. Medyo tough na conversation yan. And then, hindi natuloy yung meeting niya with Elon Musk dahil nagkasakit naman si Elon Musk. Nakakabiya rin siguro yan. And then, nag-Hawaii pa siya and then pumunta siya sa Indo-Pacific Command, which is, of course, a very, very, very important meeting also, mga kameta, no? So, in fairness naman to the president, he has been quite active and doing what is needed to be done on many fronts, and we need him really at his best, at his sharpest, dahil nga ang dami mga nangyayari sa ating bansa, mga kameta. Now, first of all, first order of things that President Marcos Jr. had to address was yung speculation dito sa issue ng ICC. Ano ba talaga? Laban or bawi? ICC na ba or hindi diba? So, this was a very serious issue, and exactly as I said, mga kameta, a few days ago, mamaya na naman sasabihin niya na naman si Ronald Llamas nagsabi yan, walang iya talaga mga tao. Talagang, excuse me on the record, may resibo ako Ito. Mamaya, by the way, guys, mamaya na sila Ronald Llamas. Okay, mag-RRL na naman kami, yung paborito nyong menage a trois. Okay, so katulad ng sinabi na, wala na, nasira na, saka mahal ko kayo, katulad ng sinabi natin few days ago, the tide has, it's changed, no? Medyo may the bamboo is kind of, swinging in a different direction, right? Alam mo na ang Pilipinas, sabi ni paring Arab, weather lang yan. Ito. So, just as we said, if you look at the statements by the Department of Justice, if you look at the statements by the leadership of the House of Representatives, Martin Romualdez, and of course, if you look at the push by some of the politicians, including not so progressive and a little bit trapo politician, for the ICC to come back to the Philippines, alam natin na medyo umiiba ng inip ng hangin. Alright? Medyo na mekos-mekos na yung politika natin. Alright? Sira na to. Itong mekos-mekos talaga. Talaga to si Insa, no? Baka maano din tayo ng Chamber of Commerce, ha? Okay, ito. Hindi, mga kameta. Kamekos tuloy. Mga kameta, ganito. Sabi ko sa inyo umiiba ng inip ng hangin and this is the Philippines. It's hard to say talaga whether alliances, especially alliances of convenience or convenience, if they're gonna hold, right? And here, clearly nakita natin mga kamay that things are changing. Now, what has President Marcos Jr. said? All right? So the DOJ, the House leadership, a number of the president, progressive, not so progressive, medyo trapo, lahat sila nagsabi na kailangan natin ipasok ng ICC dahil biglang concerned na sila sa human rights, especially yung iba na medyo sa kabilang banda sila not long ago. But anyway, Philippines being Philippines. So President Marcos Jr., aside from saying that medyo he was losing steam at pagod siya dun sa kanyang mga biyahe, sinabi rin niya na now under reconsideration, etong earlier decision to say no, big no, categorical no to the International Criminal Court. Remember, dun sa isang vlog, pinag-usapan natin yung statement ni President Marcos Jr. early this year, around June and July, when he said, no, tapos na ang usapan, we're gonna do no business anymore with ICC. Well, suddenly, iba yung inip ng hangin, right? So when he was asked about the issue, right, he said, there's also a question, should we return under the fold of the ICC? Suddenly biglang, wait lang, sir, parang nung few months ago lang sinabi mo, tapos na usapan, biglang ngayon, there's a question? So that's, again, under study. So sinasabi ni Marcos Jr. na pinag-aaralan ulit etong option ng ICC. So we'll just keep looking at it and see what our options are. Okay? So it's a kind of an answer, non-answer answer, but in a way, it can tell you also a thing about how fluid the situation is. And kung ikaw ay ka-DDS, katulad ng mga kasama natin dyan sa YouTube, among others, medyo mapapaisip ka what's gonna happen next, diba? So here, again, we see the president is conflict avoidant, but is still leaning towards one direction, which is potentially going after the other side of the equation. So, mga kameta, ito yung sinabi ni President, it's really a sense of the House resolution in the sense they're just expressing or manifesting the sense of the House that perhaps it's time to allow or to cooperate with the ICC investigation. So, remember, ito yung exactly sinabi ni Martin Romualdez, Speaker of the House, Martin Romualdez, just a few days ago, that wala akong alam dyan, wala tayong masabi dyan, ito lang may mga kasama natin dito sa House of Representatives, gusto nila express yung kanilang sense, well, they're free to do so, and we, support, transparency and consultation within the House of Representatives. So mga kameta, kung makikita niyo dito, klarong-klaro talaga na iba na talaga yung init ng hangin compared to doon sa mga pinag-usapan natin at saka your state of affairs earlier this year. And to be fair, it looks like President Marcos Jr. on multiple occasions is giving a chance to the other side to say, hoy, umayos na kayo, ako yung presidente ngayon, don't forget that. But wala si tatay, push ng push. So, President Marcos Jr. nevertheless tried to once again strike a balance. Medyo conflict avoidant, alam mo naman yung style. It's really, sabi niya, it's really a sense of the House resolution. Pero sabi niya, but as I've always said, there's still the problem in terms of jurisdiction and sovereignty. So he's not totally throwing out of the window yung sinabi niya just few months ago. Pero parang medyo nagtitipto na lilin na siya doon sa kabilang side ng argument. Now, sabi niya, now if we can solve these problems, then that would be something else. But medyo fundamental yung mga question na ganun eh. Parang academic, alam mo yung mga academic conferences, kaysa sumagot. But the bigger question is, mga ganyan. Because if you're talking about the jurisdiction of the ICC, especially since that we have withdrawn from the Rome Statute a few years back, that brings into question whether or not this is actually possible. Well, I thought sinabi niya na hindi possible. Ngayon, biglang, it's a question whether it's possible. But remember, mga kameta, sinabi ng Supreme Court of the Philippines, di ba? Meron ng stance at may explanation ng ICC, bakit applicable pa rin yan, at nakita natin, kahapon naman, ka-interview natin si Senator Leila de Lima and explain din niya bakit kasama pasok yung jurisdiction ng ICC dito sa Pilipinas. Now, let's not forget, Justice Secretary Jesus Crispin Boying Remulla also said that ngayon, under serious study. So, sabi ni Marcos Jr., pag-aralan natin, sinabi ni Remulla, DOJ Secretary, talagang pinag-aaralan natin ngayon, di ba? Na it's under serious study. But, Solicitor General Menardo Guevara, medyo iba pa rin stance. Remember, he was the DOJ Secretary of the former administration, so kailangan niya pa rin, alam niyo na, alam niyo na kalakaran. So, ito yung sinabi ni Guevara, no, who had served as the DOJ chief of the former president. Sabi niya, such resolution, if adopted, referring to a potential resolution by the Philippine Congress to allow ICC to come in and conduct independent investigation. Remember yung mga sinasabi ng mga ka-DDS natin doon? Kung wala ka naman maling ginawa, wala kang ikakatakot, diba? Ganun lang naman yan diba? Diba yun ang sinasabi nila dun sa mga suspected na drug dealer or yung mga dilawan daw na corrupt or whatever. Well, ganun din ang tanong, kung wala ka naman ginawang mali, bakit ka takot sa investigation na objective naman? So, sabi naman ni Guevara, such resolution, if adopted, rounds counter to the position of the Republic, repeatedly declared by no less than the President, the head of state, that the Philippines has no legal duty to cooperate with the ICC on jurisdictional grounds, and that any such unwanted interference in our affairs by the ICC will encroach upon the sovereignty of our country. But yun nga the President has changed his tone. And yun nga when it comes to this issue, it's not only an executive issue. The Republic is not only represented by the President, but remember, when you're talking about the Rome Statute, it's a treaty issue. The Supreme Court already had made its stance on this clear. Many in the Senate maintain that questionable yung unilateral withdrawal by Digong without the consultation of the Senate. And our very ratification of the ICC also went through the Senate. So, very simplistic na sasabihin mo, ito yung sinabi ni BBM nung June, tapos ng usapan. Well, in fact, si Junior, nag-iiba yung position ng kasalukyan ng DOJ, ang ininsist ng legislature na actually may say dapat sila dito sa issue na yan, even if the President is the chief architect of our foreign policy. And the Supreme Court also had to say on this, and a lot of objective experts and real experts and yung mga nag-iisip na experts will also tell you that the issue of complementarity will not necessarily be violated here, right? That the principle of complementarity still applies, no? So again, we see here that the President's statement is very different. So just on August 1, as ito sinabi ni Presidente that the Philippines has no intention of rejoining the ICC, all right? And a month earlier or so, he also said, wala tayong business dyan, we don't want to deal with them at all. Now, suddenly, iba yung inip ng hangin. So, it looks like Guevara is still maintaining yung stance niya as the DOJ Secretary back in the day, now as a Solicitor General, but it doesn't necessarily jive with the stance of the current DOJ Secretary saying, seriously, pinag-aaral na ngayon. And the President himself was kind of leaning and saying, maybe we'll move forward. Not to mention Martin Romualdez, he's de facto right-man hand, also suggesting that, they welcome members of the Philippine Congress to express their stance on this. But what's interesting, mga kameta, at medyo yung kulang dito sa usapin na ito, ay yung stance ng Philippine Senate. Because at the end of the day, the Senate has also supposedly a lot of say on this. And the Senate is supposed to be more independent-minded, etc. So let's see also what some of the folks, senators are going to say. Now, of course, given na yan, mga katulad ng Rizal Ontiveros, mga progressives, mga totoong opposition, alam na natin yung mga stance nila. But we want to hear. Alam din naman natin stance ni Bato. Si Bato, ang inisip niya, makakalusot siya just in case. Or stance si Robin Hood. No, I'm talking about stance ng mga more independent or centrist senators. Let's see. Or Mig Zubiri for that matter. Let's see what Mig Zubiri is going to say. Is he going to be more on board with Martin Romualdez or what? They're going to play safe or, you know what I'm saying? So these are the things that we have to keep in mind, mga kamet, as we look forward. Now, having said that, the ICC issue is just one big part of the problems that the president is not right now facing. Oh, mga kamekos, mga kamarcos, mga kameta, wala na, nakahalo-halo na. The other thing is, of course, yung ekonomiya natin. Mga kameta, ito yung ironic, di ba? When President Marcos Jr. came to power, one of the things he said is, dun sa inauguration speech pa lang niya, is, we will have, kind of like yung parang sinabi ni Trump, if I become the president, we're gonna win so much, you're gonna say, please stop winning. Yung parang ganun, may pagkaganon. Sabi niya parang pag siya naging presidente, sa ilalim niya, we're gonna have a kind of a golden era, economic era of prosperity, of plenitude and all of that, right? But the reality is that, again, to be fair to President Marcos Jr., he inherited a very bad economy because of the pandemic, but also because of the horrible mismanagement of the pandemic by the previous administration. Lahat ng mga utang na nakuha niya. But then, nevertheless, we were expecting some positive movements because, nare-recover tayo. And the GDP growth naman, in fairness, is the fastest in the region. So it's not like we're in total free fall. But if you look at some of the indicators, given the food inflation, not really good, not as bad as Argentina or Turkey or this kind of countries, but pretty troubling. And then we also saw earlier this year, actually since last year, tuloy-tuloy mga kamets, no? Itong mga reports na pabaksak yung mga foreign direct investments sa Pilipinas. So make you wonder, the president is traveling, meeting all of these foreign investors supposedly, and yet, what? By January parang almost 50% down yung ating FDI, di ba? And then more recently, down na naman by 20% in the first half of 2023. So something is not working here, right? Something has to give, something has to adjust. So clearly, the president needs to have some economic strategy reboot. Or is this a matter of just waiting it out? Because siguro yung supporters ng administration, they'll say something like, don't jump the gun right away. Hintayin mo yan. We're still going through a transition period. And one of the things that people are looking at right now is the possibility that, for instance, the Philippines will attract high-quality investment. So, for instance, mga kameta, ito may bagong announcement recently nung pumunta sa Amerika si President Marcos Jr. on the sidelines of the APEC Summit that there will be cooperation. This is the sector I keep on talking about, semiconductor chips. This is what runs everything, our cell phone, our laptop, yung mga bagong kotse, lahat yan, these are all run by semiconductors. Without semiconductors, you can barely run anything in the modern era, right? Now, the idea is the Philippines can be part of the semiconductors industry, and the US actually made an announcement recently. Sabi niya, ayon sa US State Department, sabi niya they will collaborate with the government of the Philippines to explore pa lang, okay? So let's not get too excited. Opportunities to grow and diversify the global semiconductor ecosystem, meaning less reliance on China, less production on China, push it to more friendly countries. In fact, there's a term that they use in the Biden administration. They use the term friendshoring. So this is under the Technology and Innovation ITSI Fund created by the CHIPS Act of 2022. So the International Technology Security Innovation, ITSI Fund. So this special fund is supposed to push for creating a more resilient, secure, and sustainable global semiconductor value chain, meaning minus China, or bawasan mo yung role ng China. So naturally, there's an effort to see whether the Philippines could be integrated into alternative post-China, alter China semiconductor production networks. And right now, mukhang nasa phase pa lang tayo ng comprehensive assessment of the Philippines' existing semiconductor ecosystem and regulatory framework, as well as yung human capital natin at saka infrastructure needs. So, pinag-aaral pa lang natin ng mga aliado natin because the US wants to help the Philippines and wants to push for so-called friendshoring. So, Anong say natin dito? Ang say natin dito is, okay, good signal, but I want to see more than just assessment. I want to see some big movements. But, hindi rin naman tayo bitter, I will be more than happy to see if something happens in a positive sense dun sa semiconductor investments. Because ito na nga, pabaksak yung FDI, and then katulad ng discussion natin with Sonny Angara, it's not just getting any FDI, it's getting high-quality FDI that brings jobs, that brings quality jobs, that brings quality technology, that enhances our research development, and allows us to very much leverage yung mga new trends, new waves of industrialization and technological advancement in the 21st century. Because yung mga strategy in 20th century, hindi na nagagana ngayon. Well, in 20th century, palpak yung mga leaders natin, tapos ng usapan. But now, we can be more successful. Just like Vietnam, just like many of our neighboring countries, just like even India, no? Na biglang ngayon sumasakay na dito sa new wave of industrialization and semiconductors. But let me end on this point, mga kameta. Mahalaga ito. This is very important. Let's go to the issue of Maharlika Sovereign Wealth Fund, because this is really the crux of the administration's economic strategy and policy. But one of the troubling things we're seeing is that there are big, serious questions about sustainability. No, sustainability ng Maharlika Fund. Not to mention whether the Maharlika Fund is even necessary given the circumstances, right? So, ito na nga, pabaksak yung FDI, and then pabaksak din yung profits at earnings ng Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. In fact, numbers were already down when they were reported earlier this year. September pa lang, we were seeing reports na 64% down. And then my latest report na lumabas about August, 70% down. So, something is not right here, mga kameta. Something's not right here. Now, of course, hindi naman run out of spin. I mean, you can kind of say that maybe we just made a lot of profits last year. Things look so good because nung natalo si Digong, biglang nagdagsa ng profits, and there were when we took advantage of foreign exchange fluctuation, etc. So dahil sobrang successful tayo last year compared to last year, bumaba tayo this year. But nevertheless, it doesn't look good, diba? Especially when you're asking the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, along with Land Bank of the Philippines, along with other government-backed lending institutions, to bankroll the Maharlika Sovereign Wealth Fund, which has been almost universally questioned on different levels, no, by independent experts and by independent economists, no. Now, just to talk about itong latest, so by September pa lang we saw the report na 64% down. The latest report na lumabas just the other day is 71% down naman in the first 8 months of this year. So, anyari, diba? What's going on here, diba? We have to assess what's going on here, mga kameta. So, ito, hindi pala ito. Yung isa pala yan. One second. Nasaan napunta? Ito. Okay. So, diba? Medyo alanganin. So, 71% naman yung latest na nakita natin, mga kameta. Okay. So let's go to the report and try to make sense out of it. What on earth is going on, right? What on earth is going on? This is crazy. This is crazy, mga kamets. Akala ko golden era na tayo, di ba? Pag-usapan natin yan. Mga kamekos, Marcos, Meta, okay. Earnings of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas was down by 71% to only 22.9 billion pesos from January to August, kumpara sa last year when we had an earning of 78.82 billion. And one big reason is tumaas yung mga gastos ng Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas as expenses soared. This is a term used by the Philippine Star. Ito po ang nakikita natin sa mga preliminary data, yung total revenue po ng Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas mostly comprised doon sa foreign investments, interest income on foreign investments. So kung may foreign investments, may interest income on that. Government securities and treasury bonds. Ito ay actually umakyat by 2.1% to 117.13 billion from 114.72 billion a year ago. So, interestingly, ayon sa data, actually tumaas yung revenue of the central bank kung titignan mo yung incomes earned on foreign investments and security and treasury bonds. During the 8-month period, yung BSP's interest earnings also rose by 23% to 127 billion from 103.57 billion. So 127 up from 103, that's 23.1%. But this is where so actually interestingly, tumaas yung revenues nila and yet baksak yung profit. So, something is, it's like, what's going on here? But ito mga kameta, the reason why baksak itong profits ng BSP, miscellaneous activities such as trading gains or losses, penalties and other operating income, yung mga iba-ibang fees, they recorded a net loss of 10.4 billion pesos, a reversal of last year's gains amounting to 11.15. So that's a 21.11 billion net loss, right? Right? So this year net loss, last year may positive gain pa ng 11. So you go from 11.15 to negative 10.4. Medyo 21 billion na yan. Likewise, eto mga interesting mga kameta. Ito na. Ito na mga paborito natin mga kameta. Hindi naman confidential fund to, okay? Let's be nice. Hindi ito confidential fund, okay? Iba na to. Ibang usapan to. Pero I'm just saying, it's worth mentioning. The total expenses of Central Bank, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, umakyat by 75.9%. 237 billion. Ayan ha. I-screenshot natin yan mga kameta ha. Talagang para makita nyo, bahala kayo dyan. Bahala kayo Moscow, huwag na akong atake. I'm just explaining to you what's happening here. Oh, ito. Pakita ko na sa'yo. Kaya na magbasa, okay? Kung wala kayong tiwala sa akin. Ibang klase talaga. Ano ba nangyari dyan? Laki naman ang gastos natin. Sarap ng buhay. Pare, party! Yan, ito. Tingnan nyo naman mga kameta. Kaya pala Ito. Sarap buhay, oh. Sarap buhay. Oh, basahin nyo. Bahala kayo dyan. Ilalagay ko yung link dyan, Kayo na mag-mekos-mekos dyan. Okay? Ito, ulitin natin mga kameta. Ulitin natin. So, tumaas yung revenue, total revenue. Tumaas din yung interest earnings. Okay. Pero ang taas din nung expenses. Expenses rose by 76% almost to 137.87 billion from 78.37 billion last year. So, wow, this is almost 50 billion increase, no? As interest expenses reach 109.67 billion, 2.5 times last year's 44.47 billion. The BSP reported a 2.7% rise in gains from foreign exchange fluctuation this period. So you can see there's many gains on many fronts, but for some reason the expenses part is ay sobrang laki. So we want to hear some explanation dun sa mga kameta, mga kaibigan natin dyan. How do you explain these huge expenses? Well, one way of looking at it is, alright, okay. Punta naman tayo dun sa i-mekos natin yan, dun sa interesting part. So, under Republic Act 11954, an act establishing the Maharlika Investment Fund, mahal ko kayo. Signed by the President in July, the BSP is mandated to contribute 100% of its total declared dividends as computed under RA 7653 or the new Central Bank Act in the first 2 years of the fund. So maybe there's one way to understand bakit ang taas bigla ng expenses. Because kailangan i-fund yung Maharlika Investment Fund. Mahal ko kayo. Dito sa ilalim New Central Bank Act, right? RA 7653, you can check it on your own. In the succeeding years after the first 2 years of 100% dividend payout to the national government, the BSP will remit 50% of its declared dividends to the IMF, while the remaining, MIF, not IMF, International Monetary Fund, the Maharlika Investment Fund, and the remaining 50% will go to the national coffer until the increase in the BSP capitalization to 100 billion from 50 billion has been fully paid. So there'll be slight adjustments and rebalancing that is supposed to happen, but the pressure is really large on the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. So BSP Governor Eli Remolonia Jr., sabi niya, the central bank is set to remit about 62 billion pesos to the national government in the next 2 years to bankroll the Maharlika Investment Fund. So, ang laki ng pressure dito sa BSP natin kasi yung dividends nila kailangan i-transfer sa MIF at least in the first 2 years or so as the MIF gains its footing. Sabi ni Ramolonia earlier, nag-sign siya ng memorandum order for the release of 31 billion pesos worth of dividends to the government to be used as MIF capital and set to remit the same amount next year. So, nakabigay na already ng 31 billion. Alright, so far, the government financial institution by the Land Bank of the Philippines contributed 50 billion, while the Development Bank of the Philippines chipped in 25. So, 50 from Land Bank of the Philippines, 25 from Development Bank of the Philippines, and 31 billion naman galing sa Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. So, that's more than 100 million, more or less 101 billion pesos na mapunta dito sa Maharlika Investment Fund. So, clearly, base dun sa mga ibang vlogs and discussion natin, people are wondering about, for instance, the liquidity and sustainability of the current institutional practices dun sa Land Bank of the Philippines and Development Bank of the Philippines, which, by the way, are supposed to be there and help yung mga ating mga magsasaka at agricultural sector, so you're taking away money from them. But now we are also seeing potentially pressures on the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. I'm more than happy to be corrected on this point, but from what I understand here, BSP is under a lot of pressure and they have to transfer more than 60 billion pesos, which is more than $1 billion over a 24-month period dun sa Maharlika Investment Fund. And then let's hope na lang that things will equalize and stabilize down the road. Now, what I'm more interested in, and I look forward to proper analysis on this by experts, on central bank experts and all, is what are going to be the broader implications also in terms of macroeconomic stability at saka yung ability ng Central Bank of the Philippines to cope with different kinds of pressure points and stress, etc. na ngayon nakikita natin. Ano? Wait lang, may nakat tayo dito sa mga trolls natin dito. But anyway, so, kita niyo mga kamets, no? Bantayan natin to. Let's scrutinize this. Let's get updated on this. So, I'm doing my own little part of just keeping you guys medyo updated dun sa mga latest na mga mekos na nangyari sa ating politika. Alright? On that note, thank you very much mga kameta. Please stay tuned. Later tonight, mga 11 p.m. naman. I know medyo late pero kasi yung kasama natin isa galing pa sa San Francisco, UC Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley. So, 8 a.m. pa lang sa kanya yan. So, hintayin natin gumising ng isang kasama natin para magawa natin yung paborito natin. Isa sa mga paborito natin, Ménage à Trois, RRL, Ricardo, Ronaldo, and Lisandro, right? And of course, we hope to have again RRM with Mark Gamboa, and of course, let's see, nagte-travel naman yung ating kaibigan na si Christian Esguerra, and hopefully once he's back, we can also arrange something with him. In the meantime, I hope everyone is having a good time, fantastic time, and I hope you appreciate itong mga 2 cents simple explanation natin para naman makita natin ang nangyari sa ating bansa. On that note, thank you very much, God bless, and talk to you soon.